Welcome. You've tuned into another deep dive. The material you shared this time, it's really compelling stuff. It's all centered around a really foundational Buddhist teaching found in the Upanisa Sutta.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal today really is to unpack this text, especially if maybe you're newer to Buddhist philosophy.
Indeed. And the Upanisa Sutta, it might seem concise, but it's incredibly insightful, isn't it? It lays out this core principle, dependent arising, that's paticcasamuppada in Pali, in, well, a really unique way.
Give me how?
Instead of just the usual framework, it gives us two interconnected orders. There's the mundane order, showing how suffering arises.
Right, the familiar cycle.
And then there's the transcendental order, which actually maps out the path away from suffering towards liberation. It's this dual structure that makes it so powerful, I think.
Exactly. So yeah, our mission for this deep dive is to give you a clear, detailed, hopefully influential and interesting explanation. We'll touch on some key Pali terms where they really add to the understanding, but the aim is a solid foundation, without getting lost in jargon.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's dive in then. This principle of dependent arising, paticcasamuppada. What is it fundamentally?
Well, paticcasamuppada is really at the heart of the Buddha's teaching. You can think of it as the basic law of conditioned existence. The old texts put it very simply. This arising, that arises, this ceasing, that ceases.
Okay, simple but profound.
Very. It just means nothing exists on its own. Everything arises and ceases based on conditions, like a web. And what the Upanisa Sutta does so brilliantly is show two different but related ways this principle actually works in our experience.
Which brings us to the first one you mentioned, the mundane order. So when we talk about the mundane order here, we're basically looking at that classic 12-part formula, right? The one that explains how suffering originates.
That's the one. How samsaric suffering, that underlying unsatisfactoriness in the cycle of birth, death, rebirth, gets going.
The cycle we're sort of caught in.
Exactly. According to this view, yes. And the sutta lays out these 12 links, this chain of causation, very clearly. It kicks off with ignorance, or avijja in Pali, the sort of fundamental misunderstanding of reality.
Okay, avijja, ignorance.
And this ignorance then conditions sankhara. These are karma formations. Think of them as our intentional actions, the choices driven by volition that create karmic results, like planting seeds.
So ignorance is the root condition for these actions that create karma.
Precisely. It's the very foundation of the whole cycle of suffering.
And those sankhara, those formations, they condition vijnana, consciousness.
Yes, consciousness. And from consciousness, namarupa arises. That's materiality, the whole mind-body complex, basically. Our mental and physical existence intertwined.
Right. And from namarupa
comes salayatana. That's the sixfold sense base.
our senses, sight, sound.
Exactly. The 5 physical senses plus the mind itself. As the 6th sense faculty, the place where thoughts and awareness happen, this sense base then conditions phassa.
Contact, like the sense organ meeting an object.
Yes, the meeting of the sense organ, the sense object, and the consciousness associated with that sense.
Okay, and contact leads to?
Vedana, feeling. Our experience of things as pleasant, unpleasant, or just neutral.
Okay, feeling.
Yeah.
And I bet that leads to craving.
You got it. Feeling conditions, Tanha. Craving. That deep urge for more of the pleasant and the push away from the unpleasant.
Tanha, craving. Seems
It
serious.
really fuels the fire. Because craving then conditions upadana, clinging.
Clinging, like really holding on tight.
Intense attachment to things, to experiences, to ideas, even to our sense of me and mine. And this clinging, this upadana, it conditions bhava, existence or becoming, the momentum carrying us towards future states, future lives.
Okay, Baba, existence. And that leads to?
Jati, birth, the arising of a new existence.
Birth, jati.
And finally, birth conditions dukkha, suffering.
Suffering, right. And you mentioned earlier, usually this last link is aging and death, but here it's specifically suffering. Why is that significant?
It's a crucial point in this sutta. Highlighting dukkha, suffering, here acts as a direct bridge, a pivot point, into the second order, the transcendental order we'll get to.
I see. Clever.
It really is. And it's vital to see how each link conditions the next one. It's not always strictly linear in one life, but a cycle across lifetimes. Remember that simile in the sutta? Rain falling on a mountain peak.
Yeah.
It flows down through streams into rivers and finally reaches the great ocean. It's like that. Ignorance starts the flow and it all cascades down, creating this entire mass of suffering.
So it's this relentless cycle, all powered by that initial ignorance, avijja, and the craving, tanha, that follows.
Exactly. It's a self-perpetuating loop that keeps us stuck in samsara, this round of births and deaths, because we don't see clearly and we keep grasping.
Okay, that paints a clear, if somewhat sobering, picture of the mundane order.
It does. But then the Upanisa Sutta does something remarkable. It doesn't just leave us there.
Right, the other order.
It unveils the transcendental order, Lukkatara Patikasamuppada. This is the less commonly detailed application of dependent arising. And it outlines, step by step, the path to deliverance, liberation from that very suffering we just traced.
Okay, the Katarda Padikasamuppada, the path out. And you said it connects directly, starting with suffering, dukkha.
Precisely. The experience of suffering itself becomes the necessary condition for the arising of sada, faith.
Faith, sada. What kind of faith are we talking about here? Is it blind faith?
That's a key clarification. No, it's not blind acceptance. It's more like a deep trust, a confidence, a commitment sparked by seeing the reality of suffering and hearing the Dhamma, the Buddha's teachings, about a way out. It's faith in possibility of liberation grounded in the triple gem, the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. But it's a faith you're meant to investigate, to verify for yourself.
Okay, so it's a reasoned trust born from seeing suffering and seeing a potential path. Makes sense? That initial spark.
It's the crucial first step on this transcendental path. And from that sada, that faith,
Yes.
arises pamoja.
Joy. That seems like a quick turnaround from suffering.
Well, it's the gladness, the sense of upliftment that comes from having that faith, from seeing a way out of that existential bind. It's like a release of tension and initial optimism.
Okay, pamoja. A gladness born of faith. And that joy leads to
Piti, rapture.
rapture. That sounds intense. Piti.
It can be. Piti is a strong feeling of interest, delight, even zest, directed towards the path itself, towards the practice. It comes from deepening commitment, especially through things like meditation. It's energizing, uplifting. The texts even talk about 5 kinds of piti, from subtle thrills to overwhelming waves.
Wow. Okay, so real energy there.
Definitely. It fuels the practice. But then from that rapture comes passaddhi, tranquility.
Patty, so things calm down after the rapture.
Exactly. The intense energy settles. Passaddhi is a deep quietening of mental disturbances. Both mind and body become calm, serene. It's not just physical relaxation, but the stilling of mental chatter, restlessness. The mind becomes light, workable, pliable, ready for deeper focus.
A state of real inner calm. That sounds like a vital foundation.
It absolutely is. And from that tranquility, passaddhi, arises sukha, happiness.
Sukha. Happiness. How is this different from the earlier joy, pamoja?
This sukha is deeper, more stable. It's an inner bliss that comes directly from the calm of passaddhi. It's often linked to reaching access concentration, upakara samadhi, in meditation.
Access concentration.
Yeah, where the major mental hindrances like desire, ill will, restlessness are temporarily suppressed. So it's a happiness born from a purified, less obstructed mind, not dependent on external things.
Okay, a deeper, more internal happiness.
Yeah.
And that happiness, sukha, conditions.
Samadhi, concentration.
Samadhi. This is deep focus.
Yes, the wholesome unification of mind, sustained focus on a single object. This develops from access concentration into deeper states of absorption, the jhanas.
The jhanas. Meditative absorptions.
Right, states where the mind is very unified, very still, very powerful, like honing a tool.
And this sharp tool of samadhi, this concentration, leads to
Yathaputanyanadasana, knowledge and vision of things as they really are.
Yathaputanyanadasana. That sounds like the real turning point.
It truly is. This is the arising of insight, vipassana. You use that concentrated mind, emerge from the deep jhana, and look directly at the nature of experience. You investigate the 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness, and see directly their true nature.
Which is?
Impermanent, anicca, unsatisfactory, dukkha, in a deeper sense here, and selfless, anatta. Seeing through the illusions of permanence, real happiness in conditioned things, and a solid, independent self.
So it's a direct seeing, not just thinking about it.
Exactly, a direct experiential knowing. And this seeing, this Yathaputanyanadasana, leads to nibbida, disenchantment.
Nibbida. Disenchantment. Does that mean feeling depressed or cynical?
Not at all, actually. It's not negative like that. It's more a serene turning away, a sense of weariness with the whole show of conditioned phenomena based on that clear seeing. The illusion's broken. You see that chasing after conditioned things won't bring lasting fulfillment. It's a cool detachment born of wisdom.
Okay. A wise weariness, a letting go of illusion. Nibbida. And from that
Comes viraga, dispassion.
viraga. Dispassion. The fading of desire.
Precisely. The passion, the desire, the lust for conditioned things fades out. There's a turning away from the conditioned and towards the unconditioned, towards nibbana. This often marks the entry into the supramundane path. It arises directly from understanding the conditioned nature of things through insight. The grip of craving really loosens here.
A major shift. The mind turns towards liberation, viraga, okay,
Yeah.
and dispassion conditions.
Vimutis, emancipation.
Vimudi, freedom. This is it, the goal.
This is the culmination, the full release. Freedom from the mental defilements, the fetters, jeta vimutti, and freedom from the cycle of rebirth, panya vimutti. This encompasses the stages of nibbana experienced in life, and the final nibbana after the body passes away, full liberation.
Vimudi, emancipation. And then there's one final step listed.
Yes, āsavā, the knowledge of the destruction of the cankers.
Āsavā. What are cankers, and what is this knowledge?
The āsavās, or cankers, are the deepest rooted defilements. Sensual desire, desire for existence, wrong views, ignorance. They're the outflows that keep the cycle going. This final jnana, this knowledge, is a retrospective understanding. It's the liberated person looking back and knowing with absolute certainty that these defilements are utterly destroyed, gone for good, never to arise again.
Like a final confirmation. Absolute certainty.
Exactly. That simile they use is so stark, like someone whose hands and feet are cut off knows they are gone forever. It's that kind of unshakable, direct knowledge of freedom.
Wow, what a comprehensive path. It's amazing how the Sutta lays out both orders, the mundane and the transcendental, so clearly.
It really is. And as we noted earlier, the truly unique thing is how it connects them.
Right, that suffering, dukkha, the end point of the mundane order in this version.
Becomes the necessary condition, the starting point, prasada, faith, which begins the transcendental order.
It shows they aren't separate realities, but two processes governed by the same underlying law.
Precisely. Dependent arising governs both the descent into suffering and the ascent to liberation. It's incredibly profound.
So the message isn't just understand suffering, but understand how suffering itself can be the trigger for the path that ends suffering.
You've got it. Dependent arising is the key to understanding both sides of that coin.
So reflecting on this, the Upanisa Sutta really gives us this incredibly complete picture.
It does. It shows the relentless cycle of samsaric suffering, how it's driven by ignorance and craving.
But then crucially,
it also illuminates this step-by-step conditioned path out of it, a path that starts, counterintuitively perhaps, with fully acknowledging our suffering and then cultivating faith, joy, tranquility, concentration, and ultimately liberating wisdom.
It's a powerful reminder that the potential for freedom is inherent within the process itself. The conditions for suffering can be replaced by conditions for liberation.
Exactly right.
So maybe something for everyone listening to reflect on. What are the conditions currently operating in your own life? Which ones might be keeping that mundane cycle spinning? And perhaps more importantly, which conditions could you consciously choose to cultivate, to start shifting things, to move towards that transcendental path, toward more freedom, more peace?
A very practical application.
It's a deep teaching for sure. Definitely worth exploring the Upanisa Sutta more, and related teachings too. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We really hope this exploration has been insightful for you and maybe sparked some thoughts.